Without even listening to the rest of the shop owner's frantic words, Kanzaki left the car, grabbed Shito from the roof, and jumped using her leg strength. Due to possessing bodily characteristics similar to the Son of God, saints could freely use a portion of his power. By using that power to strengthen her physical abilities, Kanzaki could temporarily move at speeds greater than the speed of sound. Kanzaki leapt up to a nearby building at a speed slow enough to not produce a shockwave. As she continued to jump from building to building, her speed quickly turned supersonic. She was heading for the beach of Nagarcoil in southern India. I need to catch up to and stop that girl before she reaches the ocean. Kanzaki gritted her teeth and she ran and jumped at the speed that caused the edges of the scenery to distort like a sugar sculpture. She could not see the attacker's back. The magician was using a high-level concealment spell, but she also had to have been moving at fairly high speed. But how naive. As she left the urban area and approached the beach, Kanzaki kept her breathing even more regular than before. She was not using a simple breathing method used for sports. That breathing method supported the mental activity that went along with high-level thoughts. She stared at the point straight ahead. She poured more power into her legs. I doubt you can lose a saint like me with nothing more than speed. Ugh! She accelerated as if shooting straight forward into open space. She caught up to a strange mass that could only be seen as a slight blur and then slammed her shoulder forward as if tackling someone and spun her arms around. Huh? She heard the sound of someone's breath catching in her throat nearby. Kanzaki ignored it and slammed the person down into the white sand. It looked like the scene of an airplane crashing. The fine sand exploded up into the air and two bodies rolled a few hundred meters. A cloud of sand spread out in a straight line following them. At the speed they were traveling, even the grain of sand held the destructive force of fire. The only reason Kanzaki and the girl's bodies were not ripped to pieces was because they had both activated defensive magic just before striking the ground. Even so, they were not completely unscathed. Ow. When Kanzaki got up, her target magician was no longer in her arms. Her opponent had likely escaped in the instant her focus had been turned towards the defensive spell. She scanned the area with her sharp eyes and spotted another figure getting up a bit away. It was the girl with brown hair. Her age seemed to be similar to Kanzaki's. The rough-looking girl wore a sports brand t-shirt and a miniskirt, but she had two backpacks on her back for some reason. She was carrying both backpacks by one strap, with one on the right shoulder and one on the left. They most likely contained spiritual items of some type. Kanzaki raised her guard, and the girl spoke while casually brushing the sand from her hair. Well, you've really made a mess of things. This isn't London. We don't have a system in place to conceal this kind of thing. If you don't at least activate a people-clearing spell, we have no way of preventing any witnesses. Who are you? We don't have any time for introductions. After saying that, the girl suddenly accelerated. She headed straight for the marine prison as if challenging Kanzaki to a race. Without hesitating, Kanzaki headed for the ocean as if alongside her. Kanzaki Kaori had no way to walk on water. However, the ocean of Nagarcoil was not completely lacking in impurities. By using the slight bit of buoyancy from empty cans, bottles, and driftwood, scraps of seaweed, and nets, Kanzaki was able to quickly move from one object to the next. Meanwhile, there was no regularity to the girl's movements, but her method was similar. She took some small objects from her backpack and scattered them in the water. She moved along those objects. The objects' details were unknown, but they seemed to be triangles a few centimeters across. As they both traveled towards the marine's prison, Kanzaki had a question in her heart. Her method of traveling over the water had to be forced to work using the leg strength of a saint. How was the other magician able to keep up? Even if she was strengthening her physical abilities using a spiritual item, she should not have been easily on par with Kanzaki, a saint with special strength and qualities and talents that fewer than 20 people in the world had. If their level of saint was so easily reached, they could not be praised as they were. And yet... Kanzaki sharply changed the direction she traveled in and suddenly approached the girl. Before the girl could react, she swung her hips around to perform a flying kick. With a tremendous noise, the girl's body was blown away to the side. Perhaps due to the tremendous speed, the magician's body skipped like a stone across the water, 2 or 3 times rather than just sinking down into the water. However, she did not collapse or sink in the end. The magician lowered her speed a certain extent partway through, but still started moving quickly across the ocean once more. She received an attack from me and got back up? She had not escaped the force of the blow. The shock of the impact had clearly been sent straight into the magician's body, and Kanzaki's hand-to-hand fighting ability was a level where she could easily destroy a thick concrete wall with one arm. Is it really that surprising? The magician smiled and reached her hand towards the 2 backpacks on her back. Saints aren't the only ones who could boast of superhuman strength. They scattered a lot of something around. They were objects of triangular size. They were made of leather. They may have been polished with high quality wax because one surface shined like an ebony desk while the other seemed to be soft and loose. Immediately afterwards, the magician disappeared with a roar. She was headed straight for Kanzaki. In the time it took Kanzaki to realize that, the magician's fist was already headed for her face. Huh? Kanzaki was shocked to find herself being knocked straight backwards. She had thought she had escaped just beyond the range of her magician's fist. But yet... Gah! A dull shock had struck her entire front body, rather than just her face. Just before the magician had sent her fist forward, she had gathered power by stomping down on the ocean, or more accurately on the triangular piece of leather floating there. The instant she did, a splash of seawater that shot up around her foot had struck Kanzaki's body with tremendous speed. The shock felt less like a spray of water and more like a steel wall. Kanzaki shot across the water, fell, but finally stood up atop a plastic bottle instead of sinking below the surface. Meanwhile, the magician looked down at her fist. Tch, I'm just not suited for sea battles. Was that Vida's? Yes, his shoe. The magician jumped high into the air. After reaching a height of 10 meters, she aimed for Kanzaki on her way down. A god named Vida existed in Norse mythology. He ruled over superhuman strength. In terms of pure strength, he was said to be second only to Thor. The role given to him was simple. He was to kill Fenrir after it devoured Odin during the final battle of Ragnarok. In the legend, Vidar grabbed Fenrir's giant upper jaw with both hands, stepped on its lower jaw with his shoe, and ripped its body in two. Vidar wore a special shoe. It was made of leather. It was not a special sacred material made especially for a weapon of the gods. Instead, it had been made by gathering together triangular pieces of leather cast aside while human leather shoes were being made. In other words, as long as you know how to make it, no other weapon of the gods is so easy to gather the materials for and to make. Kanzaki frantically fled to the side away from the magician who shot down from above like a meteor. She was sent much more seawater out than before and with much more force, but there was nothing to fear if you knew it was coming. Kanzaki immediately wielded her wires and sliced the wall of water to pieces. How does that work? But that had only been an after effect. If she had taken a direct hit, even a saint like Kanzaki would have been in trouble. The spiritual item the magician used was clearly not complete as Vidar's shoe. It was nothing more than a large amount of material, but that actually gave her a general strengthening beyond just her legs. But is that really all there is? The fists and legs that continually came up at Kanzaki had enough force to turn a failed defense into a fatal error. Kanzaki moved in a complex curving path and kept enough of a distance the magician could not catch up. It does make sense that using Vidar's power and taking an independent interpretation of the triangles of leather could spread the range of the strengthening effect. But isn't that really all it needs to rival a saint? If not, there had to be something else going on. Has she prepared some kind of other trick allowing her to outdo a saint? Or has she done something to weaken Kanzaki? Just as Kanzaki got that far in her thoughts, the magician quietly approached her. A chill ran down Kanzaki's back, but so, she did not evade. Instead, she reached for the grip of her sword. That's it! A roar exploded out. The magician swung her fist. With just that motion, Kanzaki's body was knocked over 10 meters to the side. She immediately raised the sword hanging at her waist and tried to block, but a shock that threatened the joints ran up her arms. But that was all. If she had taken the blow full on, she would likely have taken severe damage on a skeletal level whether she had been defending or not. She would no longer have been able to move at high speeds using the empty cans and other objects floating in the ocean. The magician seemed confused and Kanzaki opened her mouth to speak. Vidar's shoe was created to trample on the fangs of Fenrir, who even swallowed the chief Norse gods to support that god of superhuman strength. Your shoes use that theory to simply increase physical strength, Kanzaki said while being chased. However, that effect does not apply only to yourself. Hearing that, the magician grinned. Oh, so you figured it out. By instantaneously increasing the strength of the wind around you, you increase the strength of your powerful fist even further. I'm guessing you use the repellent force of the waves to increase your leg strength. And just before you attack me, you increase the gravity or something else affecting me in order to lower my speed just a bit. Any one of the phenomena would not have been enough to imply decisive damage to a saint. However, with the positives on the magician's side and the negatives on Kanzaki's side, the magician was able to produce a more destructive force than a proper attack would. But it's too late, the magician grinned wider. We're too far out to see. Look, you can already see the marine prison. I won't let you! The magician tried to move quickly from the marine prison and lose Kanzaki, but her movement suddenly dulled. She looked and saw Kanzaki's wires had sliced apart the triangular pieces of leather scattered about the ocean's surface. The slices were curved rather than straight lines. And I thought you wouldn't be able to withstand my attack even if you had realized the theory behind it. Well, now that I know the source of your power is, if I destroy those triangles of leather, you'll return to being a normal magician. Even if the triangles were sliced into a straight line, at least one half would form another triangle. However, that was not the case when they were sliced apart using curving cuts. She could destroy the triangles, but, the magician said and snapped her fingers. Magician. They must have been assigned to strengthen the surrounding wind because the leather remnants Kanzaki's wires had sliced the pipe were sliced further. The fan shapes made two straight lines and one curve were returned to a triangular shape. The triangle is the basis of polygons. Any polygon could be split into multiple triangles using straight lines. In that case, their methods of fighting were clear. Kanzaki would win if she could use her wires to slice the triangles of leather and destroy their triangular shape as quickly as possible. The magician would win if she used Vidal's shoe to manipulate the wind and water to return the sliced pieces to a triangular shape and increase their speed. There's a simple battle of speed. The one who created more of their shape would win and the one with fewer would lose. So, the two magicians sent slicing attacks out at themselves at extremely high speed. The wind blew and the waves disappeared. In an instant, dozens of pieces of leather were sliced apart with curving lines, and in the next instant, they returned to a pile of triangles. The distribution of what amount Kanzaki and the magician controlled changed from moment to moment, like two people trying to paint the same wall of different colors. They did not directly attack each other, but their actions indirectly led to striking a fatal blow to the other. As the battle stealing the realm of control back and forth spread, the magician smiled. She could win. No matter what shape Kanzaki cut the triangles of leather into, she could always create another triangle by adding on another cut. In other words, the magician's power would not lessen. In fact, by creating the triangle out of both halves created by its curved slice, she could increase the number of triangles and therefore increase the source of her strength. As long as she did not make any major mistakes, she could keep up the speed, and the number of triangles grew, the magician's strength grew as well. Eventually, her speed would outdo Kanzaki's. Once that happened, she could take out Kanzaki before the other girl could slice apart the triangles as leather. It was just a matter of time. If the magician could keep things going without making any mistakes, she would be victorious. But this is not merely an issue of speed, Kanzaki said quietly as she wielded her 7 wires a bit away. You will soon realize this is also an issue of accuracy. Huh? Was she saying small mistakes would eventually show up in a protracted battle? However, that was not it. An exceedingly simple problem arose just as Kanzaki had predicted. It was an issue of size. The triangles of leather constructing Vidal's shoe had only been a few centimeters long. Kanzaki was slicing through them with her wires, and the magician was returning them to the triangular shape. Two things happened as a result of this. First, the number increased, which increased the magician's strength. Second, the size of the triangles of leather got smaller and smaller. Even the original triangles that were only a few centimeters across required a good bit of skill to slice through accurately from a distance. Once the size had gone down to half or even a quarter of that, and they were only a few millimeters across, the success rate dropped. It was similar to firing a gun at the target. Even at the same distance, once accuracy would fall, the smaller the target became. Once the target was only a few millimeters across, it was like firing through the eye of a needle. And if the magician lost, she would lose her strength and be defeated by Kanzaki. The magician felt like her mental vision suddenly narrowed. It was like a game of chicken heading straight towards the edge of a cliff. She had to slam on the brakes before she was getting to the point where she was not sure if she could handle it, but her opponent continued heading on and on. She had no choice but to go on herself. Meanwhile, their battle had become an even more delicate one, where both speed and accuracy had to be used in unison. As the battle escalated from a few millimeters to a single millimeter, and then to a realm even smaller than that, the magicians were made aware of something about her own characteristics. It was true that her strength increased, the number of triangles increased. However, an increase of strength was not necessarily a good thing. It was the same as how a light jab was easier to hit than a powerful straight. The more her strength increased, the harder it became to aim carefully? No! In all honesty, the magician wanted to quit. Her head was warning her that she could not keep this up if things advanced any further, but Kanzaki Kaori was still accurately using her wires to slice the leather further and further and further and further, as if she was a piece of accurate machinery. The spiritual items were small than a millimeter, putting them at the size of a grain of sand, but she was still swiftly and surely slicing them. It was not just an issue of superhuman strength and speed. One also needed the precision to accurately wield one's power in the realm. Saints were said to have such a rare talent because they had the precise control needed to fully wield their power. So this is... The magician gritted her teeth and felt a sensation escape her. She had sliced through the air. That showed that she could no longer keep up with the accuracy needed at that scale. And Kanzaki Kaori was still swinging her wires. The triangles that were smaller than a millimeter were sliced to pieces in an instant. So this is a saint! The magician's speed suddenly dropped. She could feel the assistance from Vidal's shoe quickly leaving her. Kanzaki charged straight for the magician. With a roar, the magician was blown away by a blow from Kanzaki's scabbard. The magician flew over 100 meters before landing, and she skipped over the surface 2 or 3 times when she did. It looked similar to when someone failed in an attempt at water skiing. The magician flew right past a giant submarine that had been approaching, and they finally sank down. Kanzaki created a magic circle with her wires to activate a communication spell, allowing her voice to be heard from within the ship. Kanzaki moved to a point blocking the submarine's path and spoke. I do not know who your leader is, so I'll address all of you. You saw what just occurred, did you not? As she made the following announcement, Kanzaki pointed at her own chest with her thumb. If you still wish to fight me after seeing that, feel free to come at me.